If you feel like you're always on, mentally, emotionally, and physically, there's a reason for that. And it's because somewhere along the way, you equated being available to being responsive, to being generous and capable and you made that all feel like that was being valuable. So now you're the one who answers the late night client call, even when you have a strict cutoff time, a hard stop to your business day, where emails, text messages, and voicemails don't get a response until the next day. You jump in instead to fix something that wasn't even yours to fix. And you end up rearranging your days again to accommodate someone else's urgency. And last but not least, you say yes, even when your body is saying, "Ah, you just need to rest already." Not because you want to burn out, but because you've been conditioned to believe that being the go-to person is how you prove that you're dependable, how you prove that you care, and how you prove that you're good enough. But what if that pattern is the very thing that's draining your capacity and disconnecting you from the peace that you're craving the most? Stick with me, because in this conversation, I'm going to help you start recognizing these patterns and give you a better way to lead, live, and give without it costing your well-being. But before we get to that, I want to really dig into what this looks like for you, if this is what you're doing, because you're the one who's following through all the time. You're the one people are counting on all the time. You're the one who shows up even when no one else does. And from the outside looking in, it looks like you're holding it all together masterfully. But inside, there's that quiet pattern at play, right? You're not just being generous, you're making decisions to protect your image or to avoid guilt or to keep proving that you're the one who can handle it all. And that kind of yes decision may look aligned, but it's actually being driven by a deeper fear. The fear that saying no, well, that means that you're unreliable, or the fear that protecting your peace makes you seem unavailable, or even the fear that if you stop being the go to person all of the time, saying yes all of the time, that somehow your value might go unseen or unnoticed. If you walk away today with anything at all, I want you to remember this. This isn't about you becoming less available. It's about you becoming more intentional with where your time and your energy is going and why. It's about you getting honest about where your yes is coming from, where you're focusing your time so that you can protect your creative space, and how to shift from proving to protecting without apology, because you don't need to start canceling everything or retreating from what matters because you want to make sure that you're not over correcting in the name of boundaries, or to make sure that you're not abandoning the parts of your life that bring you meaning just to protect your bandwidth, or even retreating from what matters because you want to make sure that you're not confusing self-protection with disconnection. No, that's not what I'm talking about. What you just need to start asking yourself is if your yes, each yes that you commit to, if those yeses are honoring you too. So if you've ever found yourself overcommitting when your capacity is really already gone, you are depleted, you're drained, but you keep pushing, or you found yourself feeling guilty even when you know that your no is the right call, or you're questioning whether your value is tied to your performance, again, stick around because you, my friend, are in the right place. Hello, I'm Leslie Gadet. I'm a self-care strategist for high-achieving women who are building businesses, movements, and legacies that matter. I help women like you optimize your time, your energy, and your decision clarity without sacrificing alignment, bandwidth, or well-being. Not with surface level self care, but with high performance strategies that protect your energy, simplifying your decisions, and supporting how you actually move through the world. And today I'm walking you through a conversation that's going to shift how you think about generosity, boundaries, and what it really means to lead with self trust. So here's what we're unpacking today so you have this in mind: how being the go to person feeds your need for worth, the fine line between generosity and self abandonment. And I will explain that. Why guilt often masquerades as compassion, how to shift from proving to protecting without apology, and how and why, well, mostly how, reclaiming your decision power is one of the most self honoring moves that you can make for you. So let's get into it. First, Let's talk about the hidden weight of being the go-to person. You're the one who shows up, you respond quickly, you follow through, you rarely drop the ball. You hold a lot, right? For a lot of people because you have a lot of responsibilities. You have your clients, you have your team, you have your family, you have your community. You are doing it all because that's just who you are. But here's what I want you to understand. All that doing, all that holding, it doesn't come without a cost. It's costing you your mental space because you're constantly anticipating what's needed before anyone even asks. It's costing you your emotional bandwidth because you're carrying not just your own pressures, but everyone else's as well. And it's costing you your ability to feel present because you're always 5 steps ahead, managing what might fall apart if you pause. And somewhere along the way, your value started feeling tied to your availability because you became the one who says yes all of the time because, well, that's what dependable women do, right? You became the one who takes on the extra project because that's what leaders do, right? And you became the one who never misses a beat because, well, you take pride in being that woman. It's who you believe you need to be respected, to be valued and seen. But again, at what cost? So let me share a story about a conversation I recently had with someone who is one of the most hardworking, heart-centered, and deeply devoted women that I know. She's brilliant. She's working a full-time job outside of her home. She's building and running an incredible coaching business. She serves in her community through leadership on her condo board, and she's also the primary caregiver for her aging parents. So again, she's doing it all, right? So last week she said something that confirmed what I've seen and some time and time again, and it's really reinforced exactly what I already know to be true. She said, like, this is exactly verbatim, I feel like I'm always on. And she's right? Because from early morning until late at night, she's in task mode. She's in doing. She's constantly pivoting. She's constantly managing. She's organizing, responding. She's fixing. And even recently, she hit a snag while handling a legal matter tied to a leadership role that she holds. A third party dropped the ball, meaning some important paperwork that she considered time sensitive hadn't been filed for nearly a year. And her first reaction was not just frustration with the delay, but she took it personally. She felt disrespected. She felt like she was being taken for a ride. Here's the thing though. When you've taken on the role of being the responsible one, the one who makes sure that nothing falls through the cracks, even when it's not technically all of yours to hold, nor should it be, and you take on the responsibility like it's your personal duty to fix everything, it becomes really easy to internalize other people's mistakes as reflections of your own worth, of your reliability and your character. Because when you're always the one who fixes things, mistakes don't feel situational, they actually feel personal. They feel like a betrayal of your character, like your reliability is being taken advantage of, it's being tested, it's being questioned. And what that's doing to this person that I know, it's costing her her rest because she's constantly managing details in her mind, even when her body is trying to wind down. It's costing her her presence because even when she's physically with people she cares about, again, like I said, she is the primary caregiver for her parents. Her mind is still problem solving for everyone else and everything else. It's costing her her clarity and her focus because she's spread so thin that even simple decisions feel heavier than they should. It's costing her her emotional bandwidth because she's absorbing pressure from every direction without having the space to process or release it. And it's costing her her ability to discern what actually matters from what feels urgent because she's been conditioned to handle it all. All of this is the invisible cost that's hidden underneath the surface. So I don't know if you can relate to this. Again, you are not alone. This is something that is, I've, from time and time again, I've heard multiple different people that have talked about different scenarios. And if your identity is built on being that one person, that go-to who holds everything together for everyone else, everything else, what you're in essence doing is you're overriding your own needs by sacrificing sleep, possibly meals because you forget to eat, or you just skip it because you're too busy, and even personal time for yourself because you're so focused on showing up for everyone else that you begin ignoring your capacity, like what you can actually do, or what your energy can actually handle. Telling yourself you'll rest later, or you'll just get through this week, even as your body and your mind are begging for a break. And then you'll start resenting the very people that you're trying to help. Yet you'll keep doing it. You'll keep showing up anyway, smiling on the outside, right? While secretly, silently keeping score on the inside, and you're fuming. And all of that is building up pressure, that quiet pressure, the kind maybe that doesn't explode immediately, or it might, but it erodes over time, and it can lead to emotional burnout. And here's what I want you to understand: being the go-to person doesn't build your worth or even validate it, right? Because instead, your worth should, what happens is your worth, because this is the MO that you've been following, is getting buried underneath the invisible weight of trying to be everything to everyone all the time, while forgetting that you were already enough as you are now. And also not even recognizing that you can't be everything to everyone all the time without giving yourself that time to re-energize. And that weight, it's not just what you're doing, it's how you're carrying it that's quietly costing you the most, because the cost isn't in how much you do, it's in how much of yourself you keep giving away to stay seen as the dependable one. And that pressure doesn't just slow you down, it splinters your energy across everything you touch, because it shows up in your body, like I was saying, a subtle exhaustion, tight shoulders, shallow breathing, even signals. Because have you ever felt, before I go on, have you ever felt those moments when like you remind yourself, oh, I just forgot to breathe. Like you were so tightly wound up, it was like your body forgot to breathe. Signals that you're really operating in survival mode more than you realize. It even shows up in your conversations as short answers, distracted listening. You don't hear the whole conversation, and you're responding from a place of like not even really comprehending, feeling emotionally unavailable, even if you care deeply about the people that you're in those conversations with. It shows up in your decisions as second guessing yourself, reworking things that were already good enough, and reacting from urgency instead of clarity. It's that invisible emotional labor and the pressure that you're putting on yourself that's behind always being on, that's draining you. And over time, that quiet pressure reshapes how you show up in every part of your life. When your identity is built around being that reliable one, you don't just carry the weight of every task, you carry the weight of who you think you have to be in everything that you do. And that's what constantly drains you. So I want you to really think about it. If this is who you are, what you found yourself doing lately, I want you to start thinking of like, whoa, like, wow, like becoming really self-aware, because we can just go on through our days and just, checking off one task after another and just keep moving and just say, oh, I'll deal with it later. But it later will come, and it can compound. And over time, later comes and it disrupts everything that you're doing. So I want to move on and talk about the fine line between generosity and self-abandonment. And so what does that even mean? It means, from the outside looking in, it might seem like generosity to those who are looking from the outside, but the energy that you're bringing to it is telling a different story. So just because it looks like generosity doesn't mean that it is. If your intention is to avoid guilt or prove your worth, it's not generosity, it's actually self-abandonment. So generosity is when you give because you want to give, right? Where you're giving from a place of alignment, capacity, and compassion. So you have that time, you have that energy to be able to do that, to be generous with your time in the giving, without needing really anything in return to feel worthy. On the flip side to that, self-abandonment is when you give because you feel you have to, whether it's to avoid guilt, keep the peace, or prove that you're still dependable, that you're the dependable one. It's you removing the honoring piece of yourself from the equation. So you're abandoning yourself, your needs. It's saying yes, not because you truly want to, but because you feel like you don't have a choice without consequences, where you're prioritizing others' comforts over your own. And the real cost of that is when your generosity, excuse me, when your generosity is driven by guilt, fear, or pressure, it no longer honors your values. It erodes them because you're giving, you're helping, you're showing up. But underneath it all, you're not giving from overflow anymore. You're actually giving from depletion because you're trying to keep the peace, or you're trying to maintain an image that you are this go-to person, that you have it all together, or you're trying to live up to the expectations that other people have come to rely on, even when it costs you your own well-being. And what you've done is you've convinced yourself somehow that it's kindness. But what you see as kindness is costing you your peace. And when your peace is the price, it's not service, it's self abandonment, right? That's where the shift needs to happen, where you start to recognize the difference between intentional generosity and guilt driven giving. And the reason why is because true service comes from alignment, not from obligation, right? When you say yes to something to others while you're consistently saying no to yourself, you're putting yourself last all the time, you're not supporting them. Really, what you're doing is you're sacrificing you. Okay. You start making decisions not just from guilt, but from fear of being misunderstood, fear of seeming difficult, fear of losing trust, credibility, or respect, fear of disappointment, meaning avoiding disappointment has become more important to you than honoring your own energy, your own priorities, and your own peace. Because what happens is that when your self-worth is tied to being seen as reliable, as being generous, easy to work with, avoiding disappointment becomes a form of self-protection. And that's what's really happening, because you're avoiding the disappointment because it feels safer than facing potential judgment because you've been praised for being dependable, right? So that idea of letting someone down feels like a threat to your identity, especially if your value has been validated by how much you give. Disappointment triggers that fear of disconnection and the idea that someone might see you differently, or worse, withdraw their trust or their approval. And that feels to you emotionally risky. And saying no feels like rejection, even if it's not, because it feels like you're not just saying no to a task, you feel like you're rejecting someone, a relationship, or an opportunity that affirms your value. So you say yes, not because you have the space, not because it's aligned, but because the discomfort of possibly letting someone down feels bigger than the cost of abandoning your own needs. So I want to let that sink in for a second. So here's the truth I want you to understand. When you make decisions from fear or disappointing others, or the fear of disappointing others, you're teaching yourself that your peace of mind, your well being is negotiable. And it never should be. So let me show you what this looks like in a real world scenario. So you say yes to a client request after hours. It's family time, right? You're settling in to maybe play a board game with your kids, and all of a sudden you get a call from a client and you feel obligated to say yes to and take the call, even though you know deep down you're disappointing your family, the ones that mean the most to you, that, this is family time. It should be non-negotiable. But you say yes, not because you're excited or aligned with taking that call. You do it because you're afraid it'll affect your relationship with your client and how they'll see you. And you might even wonder, what if this affects their testimonial of how the experience of working with me is, or their trust, or even their referral of referring business to me? And that can be really super scary. But then again, you're tying your well-being to how others treat you, to how others see you, and that's not really fair to you. So let's look at another scenario. Let's say you rearrange your week to help a friend last minute. They want to go over something that you've discussed in the past and you thought they had moved on from it, but it seems like they're still stuck on the same old story. And so you say, sure, I can make it work. Not because you have the capacity to do it. In fact, you were hoping to take a long weekend away to rest and recharge. And instead, those plans have gone up in smoke, and you say yes because saying no just feels like you're being selfish, not a good friend. And even though you haven't had a single moment to yourself in what seems like forever, you say yes anyway. And here's the thing, these yes decisions, they're not coming from generosity. Again, they're coming from fear. You're fearful of disappointing someone, fear of being misunderstood because you think you're going to be thought of as selfish because you want to take time for you, right? I've heard a lot of women say that self-care is selfish. Fear of losing your reputation or your relationships or your image as the one who's always there, the one who can always be depended on. And if your generosity leaves you feeling drained, distracted, or resentful, again, it's not generosity. It's a patterned response rooted in guilt or something else, because maybe that something else is external validation or people pleasing. And guilt, external validation, or people pleasing are not a good compass for clarity. That is a cue for you that it's time for you to check in, not to just check off another favor on your to-do list. Okay? Because when you abandon yourself to take care of everyone else's needs, you're not leading with generosity, you're leading with fear, and you're calling it kindness. So let that sink in for just a minute, because I really do want you to live a life you love. And if it's at the cost of your well-being, the cost is way too high. Okay? All right, so now let's talk about the why guilt often masquerades as compassion. Okay, because from the outside in, it can look like kindness. We've talked about this a little bit. It can look like generosity, but if we're being honest, it's not. When we operate from that place of guilt, we're telling ourselves that if I don't do this, I'm selfish. They'll think I don't care. They need me, and I can do it, so I should do it. Sound familiar? You might not have said those exact words, but maybe your body has. Maybe your energy is whispering what your voice hasn't said out loud yet. You know, guilt can really convince you that saying yes is the right thing to do, when what it's really doing is it's hijacking your decision making. And here's what I want you to also remember. Guilt shouldn't be your guidance system, because it's not clarity. It doesn't help you operate from clarity. It doesn't help you operate from alignment. It's not your intuition speaking when you are making decisions from guilt. It's either the echo of someone else's expectations, or you just don't have a strong enough self-worth. You don't feel that you're good enough. And maybe that could be from your upbringing, your work environment, or the cultural norms around what it means to be a good person, or a team player, or the dependable one, or even from another deep-rooted fear that or belief that you need external validation, that you're enough, that you're dependable, that you can be counted on. So again, if you are saying yes to avoid discomfort, to avoid the possibility of being seen differently, or to avoid disapproval or distance, again, that is not compassion. That's fear wearing a mask. Compassion is rooted in connection, right? Being with people where you feel in alignment, where your time and your energy are being used wisely, are being used where you feel good, where you're on this higher level vibration, feeling good about the connection. However, and you also feel good about the things that you say yes to, the things that you commit to. Guilt, on the other hand, is rooted in the fear of rejection, right? Fear that, oh, I won't be seen as enough. I won't be seen as dependable. I won't be seen as someone who can be relied on. I won't be seen as that team player, right? But that's guilt. It's guilt that's rooted in the fear of rejection. And the more that you say yes from that place, the more you're disconnecting from your needs, from your priorities, and your truth. So here's the shift I want you to make. When you feel that familiar pull to say yes, start checking the motivation behind your yes. When your instinct is to respond before reflecting to see if it's a right fit, again, start checking the motivation behind your yes. When you catch yourself defaulting to people pleasing or peace, or just to keep the peace, start checking the motivation behind your yes. When the request sounds simple, but it feels heavy and it just doesn't feel good, start checking the motivation behind your yes. Where's that coming from? And when your body says to pause, but your mouth says yes immediately, again, start checking that motivation behind why you're saying yes. Take a breath if you need to. This isn't small, I know. This is the work, but it is so worth it. to take that time to pause, to really make sure that the motivation behind why you're saying yes really is in alignment with what you're doing right now, and the person that you are being, and the life that you're living, and if this is in alignment with what you truly want to do. Because if your yes honors both your energy and your intention, that's the kind of compassion that's actually sustainable. If it's grounded in clarity, alignment, and honors the energy you have to give, that's using discernment as a positive tool, not using guilt. When your decision reflects strategy, intention, and sustainability, that is what real leadership looks like. If your choice protects your priorities, it protects your time, your energy, and your impact, that's not selfish, that's self-respect, right? Because you're making decisions from alignment, not obligation. However, again, if your yes decisions are driven by fear, pressure, or a need to prove, it's guilt, people pleasing, or you seeking external validation of your worth, which means you are not leading from that aligned place. You're leading from guilt disguised as generosity. So let me go a little bit deeper into what I mean by guilt disguised as generosity, just so you can see if you see yourself in these scenarios. So you look like you're being generous, okay? When you stay late to help a client, even though you're beyond capacity, okay? Or you step in because the same team member has dropped the ball yet again. This is what they do. They leave things to the last minute. They always know that they can depend on you and come to you and say, hey, I need help. And you'll drop everything to do it because you know it needs to get done. And you look at your worth as being the person who can come in and fix it to make sure that things go, because you don't want your image to be tarnished, or your reputation is important, so you will do that. How about when you rearrange your whole week for somebody else's emergency, and this is not the first time, this is a pattern for you. Or when you say yes to a favor you just don't want to do, it's not in alignment, but you feel like you should or that you have to. From the outside, it might look like kindness because other people think, oh, this person's great. She's a go-to. She's dependable. She's reliable. I know I can count on her. And it looks like you're supportive. It looks like generosity, right? But if you zoom in on what's driving that motivation underneath the surface, you didn't say yes because it aligned with your values, or that you had the time or the energy or even the capacity to really fit that in. You said it because you didn't want us to look selfish. You were worried that you'd be disappointing someone. You were worried and you feared that they would see you differently. You also felt like saying no would make you less of a good person. And that's not generosity. That's what I mean by guilt in disguise, because that true generosity comes from overflow, clarity, and intention. When you know that you are taking care of you, and then you know how to really make those decisions from an aligned place, that is where true generosity comes from. But when you have your guilt-driven yes decisions coming from avoiding discomfort, fear of judgment, and the internal pressure to prove your worth so that it feels like generosity, but it's actually self-abandonment packaged as service, right? So if it's costing you your peace, your clarity, your time, it's not generosity, it's guilt wearing a mask. So let's talk about the difference between a yes that proves and a yes that protects, because here's the truth. Every yes is either a performance to prove that you're capable, helpful, or reliable, or it's a decision that you're making to protect your time, your energy, clarity, and alignment, or to protect your image. And the shift between the two starts by retraining your decision-making process. I like to say, change your brain, you change your life, meaning change how you think, and you can change where your focus is going and start making better decisions. And that's where the 3-question yes filter comes in. It's one of the core tools. You've heard me say this before if you've been watching my lives. It's inside my yes reset method. It's simply to ask yourself, does this align with my highest priority focus for this season? Because again, not everything good is aligned and not everything urgent is a priority. Am I saying yes from alignment or from obligation or even from guilt or fear, right? That's the other thing. Because the energy behind your yes matters more than the task itself, because your energy is what's going to carry you into the commitment. And if your yes is fueled by alignment, it creates momentum. But if it's fueled by guilt, fear, or pressure, it creates emotional residue, resentment, overthinking, exhaustion, and it determines how you show up. 2 people, as an example, can complete the same task, but the one who says yes from clarity brings presence, right? Focus, and sustainability. But the one who's saying yes from that pressure is bringing stress, self-doubt, and depletion, because your life is shaped more by how you feel doing the thing than by simply doing the thing, right? So a misaligned yes might check the box, but it could cost you mental clarity. An aligned yes will move the needle without draining your reserves. So this is the hinge between proving and protecting, because it becomes less about doing more and more about doing what honors you, honors how you use your time and your energy, so that every yes actually works for you, not against you. And the third question is, what am I trading for this yes? Because again, as I said before, every yes is a trade, and you want to be conscious about the exchange. It's how you go from automatic yes decisions to aligned and self-honoring ones, because you don't need to earn your peace. You don't need to prove your value through overextending yourself, which can lead to exhausting yourself. What you need is a strategy that honors what matters without draining what's left. And of course, when you have that decision-making process that honors your time and energy, when your worth isn't tied to how many yes decisions that you make, or how quickly you respond, or how much you can handle without breaking, everything shifts, because you start making those decisions from self-trust, not pressure. And you learn to say yes with clarity, not hesitation. You create that momentum that feels good because it's aligned. And maybe most important of all, you become the protector of your well-being. Again, without guilt, without over-explaining or apology. This is what sustainable success is built on. Not running faster, not proving more, not overextending to be seen as enough, but making intentional, aligned, and self-honoring decisions, one powerful yes at a time. So I hope you see yourself I hope that if you see yourself in any of what I've covered today, that it makes you take some time to pause and reflect on your choices, so that you can start to make changes that really honor you. Because this is important. You are important. There's only one of you, right? And if you have a lot of things that you're doing, and as I said, my friend is always feels like she's always on because she has so many responsibilities, but you don't take time for yourself, it's really going to make a difference in your time, how you use your time, how your energy could be depleted, and even leading to burnout, which most times people are only looking at symptoms and not even looking at the possibility of full-on burnout. Now, if you're ready to stop overcommitting, overthinking, and overextending yourself just to prove that you are dependable, and you want to start making intentional, self-honoring decisions that actually protect your well-being and not drain it, so you can create that space to think clearly, right? To lead strategically, to rest without guilt, trusting your gut without second-guessing every decision, and reconnect with the people you love from a place of joy, and not making decisions out of obligation. So you can be generous without feeling exhausted, and supportive without that self-abandonment piece, and feel confident saying yes or no without over-explaining or apologizing or proving a thing. And taking back your mental space, emotional energy, and creative bandwidth, and live and lead in a way that actually feels good. Then I invite you to book a Yes Reset strategy call with me, where we'll identify the misaligned yes decisions that really are quietly draining your time, your energy, emotional bandwidth, so that you can implement a personalized yes filter to help you make clear, confident decisions rooted in alignment, not guilt, and so that you can walk away with a strategy that supports how you want to live, love, and lead your life without the quiet resentment, overthinking, or overcommitting. Then send me a message or comment below in the video below, and I'll send you the link to book your call. Now, I know I've gone over just a little bit, but I just felt this was such an important live to do today. So before I wrap up, I just want to leave you with this. I want to remind you of this. You don't need a packed calendar to validate your worth, okay? Or to prove that you're dependable. You don't need to say yes to everything just to be seen as committed, or to be seen as the one who can always be counted on. You don't need to carry the weight of everyone's expectations to prove your value. When your decisions are rooted in clarity, not pressure, what you say yes to starts reflecting who you truly are, not who you think you need to be. So as you move through the rest of this week, remember this. You can be generous without abandoning yourself. You can be dependable without overextending your time and energy. And you can honor your values without guilt, without apology, and without proving a thing. So take a breath. This isn't small. I know this is work, but you are important, and you should start treating yourself as a VIP like you are. Thanks for being here with me today. I truly appreciate you. If this conversation resonated, please be sure that you subscribe if you haven't already, and hit the bell so that you never miss when I go live. I hope you have an amazing rest of your week, and I will see you next time.